Marjin van de Geer, who is the media liaison for Extinction Rebellion. Thanks so much for joining us. First, I have to ask you why you chose this approach.
Of the hunger strike?
Yes.
Yes. This was actually organized initially by XR US, and they are approaching their politicians regarding the climate and ecological crisis, and then they've reached out, and it's now a global thing. So hunger, food shortage is something that we are already seeing in many countries all over the world, but it's something that in richer countries we're not familiar with at the moment, but we will be having to deal with food shortage very soon if we don't act now.
Okay. You know, some have questioned that whether you're actually rallying support for your cause or sometimes driving people away. There are, you know, potentially sympathetic people who have just been kind of driven a bit crazy by having their lives disrupted so negatively by certain protests, particularly in Australia and the United Kingdom. Some of them can't afford not to get to work, for example. I know you're making your mark, but are you sure these are the most effective ways to rally support for a cause that is gaining a lot of sympathy generally worldwide?
Absolutely, and it's a really hard one, and we don't like disrupting people's lives. We're extremely apologetic about this. The problem is that we have tried conventional ways, you know, climate marches, petitions, all these kinds of things, and they just haven't been effective. Our government just isn't listening, and they're not taking this seriously. So the only way that we know how to really get their attention and communicate this urgency is by disrupting business as usual. And unfortunately, that is also impacting the kind of people who we don't want to impact, the ordinary working people. And we don't want to be taking these kinds of actions, but we have to now. There's no other way. And actually, the people that we're talking to on the streets are initially very upset with us. But when we explain to them, you know, we are potentially facing mass starvation all over the world. This is going to impact us in our own lifetimes. This isn't something abstract from the future in 100 years' time. We're talking 5, 6, 7, 8 years' time. Then, you know, people are getting more and more sympathetic to this, and they understand that this kind of disruption is actually necessary.
Okay. So, I mean, you feel it's working. I mean, as for the hunger strike, though, is this the right time? I mean, usually that type of action is a means of last resort. Are you sure you're not playing that card maybe a little too early?
Yes, it is a last resort, and we are now at this point of last resort. Hunger strikes, you know, mass disruption to societies and the economies, these are all last resort tactics. We are at the end of our wits of how to make our leaders see that this is the #1 crisis we are facing, and this has to be top priority on every single agenda around the world.
Okay.
So yeah, you're right. It is a last resort action, and it has come to that time now.
Okay, Marjin van de Geer, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.